Good day, class. Today we're going to study the accounting cycle, journalizing of external transactions. So we have the operating cycle of the merchandising business. It starts from the seller buying merchandise for resale, this one, and then seller sells on cash or account. So when the seller sells on cash or account, he loses his merchandise but gets cash or accounts receivable, and he records this transaction on his journal. So if the sale was on account and there were no problems with the goods delivered, seller collects on due dates, net of sales discount if the buyer pays within the discount period. So there are three kinds of sales: sales for cash, sales on account, sales on account with discount, and sales on account without discount. So it is easier if the sales transaction is an ordinary sale for cash or on account without any discount. But when there is a discount, the seller has to take note of the due date when the payment was made, because if it is paid within due date, then the discount should be recorded. And if there is problem with the goods sold, then there will be sales returns and allowances. So the buyer will notify the seller using a debit memo. So the seller, on the other hand, will reduce the accounts receivable using credit memo. So the seller, we're talking about the seller here, so we're going to record the credit memo issued to the buyer. So at the first point, the seller is also a buyer. So if the seller finds the goods purchased to be defective, then the seller will issue a debit memo to the supplier. So the seller as a buyer will issue a debit memo to the supplier, and as a seller will issue a credit memo to the buyer who reports a defective merchandise. So, yun yung ikot natin. So, this is the income statement of a merchandising concern. So, if it is only a sales business, you just record the revenue, and then you have all the items of expenses. But in a merchandising concern, you have this portion. This is the portion where you have to determine first the gross profit. So you have to determine the gross profit in a merchandising business before you arrive at the net income. So compute first what is the gross profit from the sale of goods. And then after that, you compute for the net income by deducting the other operating expenses. Because you would want to make an analysis how you are making, if you're selling at the right profit. So you determine the gross profit first. Is this enough profit to maintain an operation? Is this enough profit to maintain an operation and continue the business? So this is for the analysis of the merchandising business. So we have the sales. This is a new account for you, sales, because you've studied only revenue in the service business. And then we have the sales returns and allowances account. So when using perpetual inventory, or at the end of the period, you have the cost of goods sold account. So these are the accounts that you're going to use in the merchandising business, and other accounts that we will encounter later in the discussion. So these are transactions peculiar to merchandising business: sales. So we have the sales transaction: cash, debit, credit, sales, debit, cash, credit sales, when the sale is for cash. Now we have debit accounts receivable, credit sales, when the sale is on account. So, take note of the journal entries. Now, this will be a more specific illustration of the income statement showing gross profit. So, if you have the sales, returns and allowances, net sales, cost of goods sold, gross profit. This is the difference. This is the peculiar items in the financial statement or income statement of a merchandising concern. So we have the sales returns and allowances. Sales returns and allowances is a deduction from the sales transaction. So the original entry was debit accounts receivable and credit sales, and then because it is the goods were defective, they were returned. So instead of debiting sales and crediting accounts receivable, a new account is created. This is sales returns and allowances. So we would know what are the causes of the sales reduction. So this is presented in the income statement as a deduction to sales. So sales with a discount. So when you have a sale on account, you can either give discount or none. But if you give discount, you have to write in the explanation the terms of the discount to monitor this upon payment of the account by the customer. So in this example, we'll take the sale made to Dr. Riginding. So we debited accounts receivable 1,000 and credited sales for 1,000. So what are these discounts? We have to understand this discount. We have discussed the sales discount, and then we have the list price, trade discount, invoice price, accounts receivable, cash discount. Paano ba yan? And then cash ultimately. Ito yung series of steps. So, product catalogs often provide a list price for an item. The list price may bear little relation to the ultimate selling price. A merchant may offer a customer a trade discount that involves a reduction from list price. Ultimately, the purchaser is responsible for the invoice price. That is, the list price less the negotiated trade discount. Trade discounts are not entered in the accounting records. They are not considered to be a part of the sale because the exchange agreement was based on the invoice price. The trade discounts are just considered as marketing strategy. Remember the general rule that sales are recorded when exchange takes place because the measurement of sales is based on the exchange price. The amount recorded as a sale is the invoice price. The entries previously shown would have been, kunyari yung kay Dr. Riginding, she was enticed to buy the merchandise for 1,000 pero nagbigay na ng original list price, kunyari 1,200 yung TERIMACOR drugstore. Sabi niya, kung bibili ka ngayon, 1,000 ko na lang bibigay sa'yo. Pero sa list price nakalagay 1,200. Pero ini-entice niya si Dr. Reginding na bumili. O sige, bilhin mo na lang to ngayon. Kasi ngayon na lang yan available. Susunod wala na. Bibigay ko na lang sa'yo ng 1,000. So yung 200, that is a trade discount. It does not form part of the exchange transaction. Wala pang exchange doon hindi pa naman bumibili. Pero pag bumili na si Dr. Reginding, may exchange transaction na. So, yun na yung i-record natin. So, yung 1,000 na binili ni Dr. Reginding. Dahil utang yan, gusto nating magbayad ng maaga si Dr. Reginding. So, sasabihin naman natin, I will give you 10 days within which you can pay it with a discount. Within 10 days, bayaran mo yan. May discount ka na 20%. So, bibigyan ng discount si Dr. Reginding ng 20%. Magbabayad naman siya within the period of discount. Ang tawag doon ay cash discount. Yung cash discount is a deduction from the accounts receivable. So, a cash discount is offered as a collecting strategy. Yung trade discount, this is a marketing strategy. Yung cash discount is a collection strategy para makapag-collect ka agad ng maaga yung mga businesses. So, you hear the words sales discount and purchase discounts. These are cash discounts. Depende na lang kung sino yung nagbibigay at sino yung tumatanggap. So, kung seller yung nagbigay ng discount, you call that a sales discount. Kung ang buyer ang nakatanggap ng discount, you call that as purchase discount. So, it depends just on the who's holding the discount or giving out the discount. So, sales discount from a seller's point of view, and purchase discount from a buyer's point of view. So, this is the illustration of the terms of payment. So, yung seller sold an account. Now, this buyer was given a discount. If she pays within 10 days, if that is the term of the discount, then he will be given 10% discount. If he pays within 10 days, then his accounts payable will be reduced. If he does not pay within 10 days, then there will be no cash discount given to him. So, we have this invoice. You have to analyze the invoice. As to the date of the invoice and the terms of the sales transaction. So, take note of that in recording the transaction. Now, how are you going to record the payment of Dr. Reginding in our example? So, you take note of the date of payment. If she pays within the due date, then you have to allow her the discount. If she did not pay on due date, then there will be no discount. So there are other terms that you have to understand fully well. These are the terms of shipment and freight collect and freight prepaid. So terms of shipment will either be FOB, shipping point, and FOB, destination. What do you mean by FOB? FOB simply means free on board. This is the point in the supply chain in which the buyer accepts ownership of a shipment and the seller relinquishes his ownership over the goods. Ibig lang sabihin, it is a point of time when there is a transfer of ownership. So, if it is shipping point, then at the time when the when the seller delivers to the buyer from point of business the goods. So, kunyari sa SM, pumunta ka, bumili ka ng appliance doon, inisyuhan ka ng resibo. The moment na inisyu sa'yo yung resibo, kasi shipping point, nandun ka na-deliver na sa'yo doon, then, the owner of the goods will then be the buyer. So, magiging responsible na yung buyer sa expenses and losses the moment na issuehan na siya ng resibo ng binilihan niya from the SM. Now, bumili siya sa SM pero ang sabi FOB destination, hanggat hindi na di-deliver dun sa seller, sa bahay ng seller yung goods na binili niya, then the owner will be the seller. Kung sino yung nagbenta sa kanya dun sa SM doon. So, kung masira yon, eh, ang magbabayad ay yung seller. At yung transportation nun, ang magbabayad yung seller. Responsibility ng seller na bayaran yun. Kumbaga, yung obligation to pay the freight ay nasa seller. Pero minsan, kahit yung obligation nandun sa tao, hindi siya mismo yung nagbabayad. So, eto yung freight collect. Ibig sabihin, yung buyer yung nagbayad. At freight prepaid, ang ibig sabihin, yung seller ang nagbayad. Buyer ang nagbayad, pero it doesn't mean na buyer yung obligated to pay. Seller ang nagbayad, pero hindi ibig sabihin yung seller ang obligated to pay. Siya lang yung nagbayad. Sila lang yung nagbayad. Pero i-consider nyo pa rin kung ano ba yung terms of shipment. Shipping point ba yan? Or FOB destination. So, sa FOB destination, hanggat di nakakarating sa buyer, yung goods, ang may-ari ay seller. Therefore, ang liable to pay the expenses ay ang seller. FOB shipping point, pagkabayad nung buyer ng goods doon sa place of business, sa kanya na yung goods, so liable na siya for the transportation expenses and losses. Now, sino ngayon ang nagbayad? So, kunyari, number 1, FOB shipping point. Dapat ang magbabayad ay ang seller, ay ang buyer, kasi siya yung bumili at shipping point yon. Siya ang magbabayad ng transportation expense or freight. Now, pero ang usapan ay freight prepaid. Freight prepaid, FOB destination. Ang liable, buyer. Pero ang nagbayad, seller. Anong mangyayari? Anong sabi ng buyer? Sige, bayaran mo muna yung shipment cost or freight or transportation cost. Isama mo na sa utang ko yan. So, anong mangyayari? Seller nagbayad, pero hindi siya liable dito. Mag-i-increase yung account receivable niya. I-increase niya yung accounts receivable niya from that client for the amount of shipment or transportation expense. Ngayon, freight collect. Ang magbabayad ay ang buyer. Shipping point, sino liable? Buyer din. So, walang epekto sa transaction yun ni seller. Si seller walang increase dun sa accounts receivable kasi wala naman siyang binayaran. Pero yung buyer, magkakaroon siya ng transportation expense. So, yung transportation expense ng buyer will be part, sa pag-record niya, kung may business siya, i-record niya rin yun as part of the cost of purchases. Now, freight collect, it is the buyer who pays. Shipping point, sino may-ari ng goods? Buyer. Sino nagbayad? Buyer. So, dun sa record ni seller, walang problema. Debit, accounts receivable, credit, sales. Si buyer, ganun pa rin. Magbabayad din kasi siya ng transportation expense, meron pa rin siyang freight in dahil shipping point walang nabago. Pero hindi nadagdagan yung accounts payable niya. Same accounts payable pa rin. Freight collect, point of destination. Ito, freight collect, ang buyer yung nagbayad. Pero ang liable yung seller kasi FOB destination. So, ano mangyayari? Mababawasan ngayon yung accounts receivable nung seller kasi ang magbabayad ng freight ay ang buyer. Although yung buyer hindi liable, siya magbabayad, ima-minus na lang dun sa accounts payable. So, yung seller, mababawasan yung accounts receivable niya doon sa buyer. Pati yung buyer, mababawasan yung accounts payable niya. Okay, we go to the next. So, ito yung iti-take note sa resibo. Date. And then, the terms para sa monitoring ng cash discounts. And then, sa shipment terms, FOB point, ibig sabihin shipping point. Or kung ano ba ilalagay dyan, destination ba? Because malalaman natin sino ang mag-bear ng transportation expense. Itong invoice date at terms para sa cash discount. Itong shipment terms ay para sa transportation expense. So, freight in or freight out ba yan? Parehong expense. We talk about the same expense. Pero, iba ang tawag. Ang tawag ng isa ay freight in. Ang tawag ng isa ay freight out. So, if goods are sold FOB destination, the seller is responsible for cost incurred in moving the goods to the desired destination. Freight cost incurred by the seller is called freight out and is reported as a selling expense, which is subtracted from the gross profit in calculating the net income. If goods are sold FOB shipping point, the purchaser is responsible for the paying of freight cost incurred in transporting the merchandise from the point of shipment to its destination. Freight cost incurred by a purchaser is called freight in and is added to purchases account in calculating the cost incurred in calculating the net purchases. So, itong freight in ay sa purchaser mo makikita. Itong freight out, makikita mo sa seller. Kasi itong freight in ay part ng cost of purchases. Itong freight out ay part ng selling expense. So, itong freight out pag FOB destination. Itong freight in kapag ka FOB shipping point. Because the seller will pay it. So, freight in ang tawag. Because the buyer will pay it, freight in. Because the seller will pay it, freight out. So, tignan mo lang sino nagbayad. Buyer ba? That is freight in. Nagbayad, seller, to transport. That is freight out. So, FOB shipping point or origin, paano i-record yung transaction? So, from the point of view of the TERIMACOR drugstore, you just debit accounts receivable, credit sales. From the point of view of Dr. Riginding, the buyer, so meron siyang purchases, meron siyang freight in, then accounts payable, and cash. FOB shipping point. Ang nagbayad ay ang buyer. FOB destination. So, from the point of view of the seller, meron kang accounts receivable, this time meron kang freight out. Meron kang expense kasi ikaw nagbayad. And then the deduction to cash, and then the recognition of sales. Doon kay Dr. Ginding, walang epekto kasi hindi naman siya nagbayad. Wala siyang additional expense because the term is FOB destination. The expense will be for the transportation will be for the account of the